I am feeling excited and nervous to walk you through the land of jackals and giraffes this week as we talk about nonviolent communication. I'm excited because a lot of this is new for me. I found out some stuff about effective communication that I didn't know before, and I love it when that happens. So I'm excited about that. I'm nervous because this is the third take I've done trying to walk my way through this newer stuff without a ton of editing, and hopefully I'll nail it this time. So let's begin. Nonviolent communication was what I wanted to talk about this week, and we're going to spend the next, let's see, after this, 3 more weeks with a general overview of conflict resolution and healthy habits about resolving conflict in communication. And right now, oh my gosh, there is so much communication that seems violent, might be a little too amped up a word, but it certainly is not effective, and it is not the kind of combination of interchanges in communication where people seem curious, seem like they are trying to understand rather than be understood, things we've talked about before. So as I was Googling and going down the rabbit hole, I found out that nonviolent communication is actually a technique that this guy Marshall Rosenberg started in the 1960s. That was another time in our country when things were really heating up. And Rosenberg actually started a center for nonviolent communication in 1984. And for our younger crowd, that was not that long ago. Thank you. And that center is still open. You can take trainings in this technique. They have them all over the US, all over the world, and I may look into that. So I'm excited again because this is something I got more research to do, but I'm going to walk you through the basics as I still learn it here. So, key concept that Rosenberg talked about. People have needs. And sometimes when we get into this place of conflict, it's because needs aren't being met, either yours or the other person's. And he kind of gave a wide array of needs. Here's just some words: the need for respect, need for autonomy, need for appreciation, feeling appreciated, the need for safety. That's a big one, especially for kids. The need for understanding, to understand the whys, the hows, right, of things. The need for fairness. Is this fair or is somebody getting special privileges? And the need for connection. We've talked about that probably not every week since I started this, but a lot. And when the needs aren't getting met, sometimes the way we communicate that is by lashing out, coming out the side of our necks, blaming other people. So with nonviolent communication, there are 4 steps that Rosenberg teaches about and recommends that you do. And the first one is to make an observation, not a judgment, but an observation. So, in future weeks, after we get through this conflict resolution, some habits around that, we're going to go right into the workplace. And I'm looking forward to that one too. We've talked a lot about interpersonal relationships with your family, significant others, people you see every day. But the workplace is kind of a different type of setting. And I think the process with these 4 things would work really well at the workplace. So you make an observation instead of a judgment. The judgment would be, oh, you're always late. The observation would be, our meeting started at 9 and you arrived at 9:15. So to me, I'm a recovering people pleaser. I'm somebody that avoids confrontation. I'm getting better at it. That second one seems a little what people might call passive aggressive. And I had to, again, I'm kind of getting used to this, but it's not. It's just a fact. The meeting started at 9 and you arrived at 9:15. So that's the observation. The second part of this technique is to put a feeling in about that. You're bringing it up for a reason, right? So I feel frustrated and stressed, period. I didn't say anything about the other person. I feel frustrated and stressed. And what's interesting about this one and the technique is to keep it as a feeling, not as an accusation. So this is where I got to dig a little bit deeper, especially with those things, those passive aggressive statements, because I got a master's degree in being passive aggressive. But saying things like, I feel ignored, I feel manipulated, I feel disrespected, I'm not really putting out my feelings. I'm still throwing some shade and judgment your way, right? So just the feeling. I make an observation based on fact, and then I give you the feeling. And then the third thing I'm going to do is tell you my need. Because this whole conflict is starting because I have a need that isn't being met. So you may put some feelings in there before you put the need. Like I just came up with these. I was trying to use that meeting scenario. So for me, this would just be me. I felt frustrated and stressed because I need help and support with this project. That's why we're having the meeting, the project, and I feel frustrated and stressed because I'm feeling I don't get help and support, and I need that. That's the underlying need that I've put out there. And again, Rosenberg would say needs are universal. Some that he mentions are need for respect, need for support, need for things to be fair, the need to have rest, you know, the need for autonomy, and the need for connection. There it is again. So when you talk about needs or feelings, it lowers the temperature, it lowers the judgment because it's harder to say to people, you don't feel that way, you don't need that, right? And that's why this type of conversation works. And then the fourth, which might be the most difficult for a people pleaser like myself and someone who avoids conflict, is I'm going to make a request from you now. So the request I might have for this whole meeting scenario is, would you be willing to schedule and hold some meetings in the future? That takes it right off my table. And again, if you can imagine that you're holding a meeting and you have someone who is late, and we'll just say they're late this one time, but maybe they're late more than one time, and you know you have thrown some judgment their way, what would your request be? So to me, I think of Seven Habits begin with the end in mind. I would love if somebody else scheduled and held some meetings and I could be the person attending them. If this is a project that we're all supposed to be involved in. So that would be the one for me. The demand, the way to do it not in this nonviolent type of way would be you need to start supporting me and stepping up to this project, right? You need to be on time. You need to get your priorities straight. You can see how that is going to build resistance and discord. We've talked about those before. But hopefully, this way builds collaboration. And it shows to me, even though I haven't seen this, in the research I've done, to me, it shows a degree of there's kind of like I'm asking for something because I'm vulnerable. And I've mentioned Brene Brown talks about the power of vulnerability before. If somebody comes at me letting me know how they feel, rather than putting it on me that I did something wrong, I am much more likely to go, oh, how can I help? Because we only see what people show us, right? So nonviolent communication basically says the same things I'm saying, it's just different words. And I love when I see a theory of communication or counseling that's the same, it just got some different words in it, because that means there's something there. It's been around for a while. What they say is let's stop blaming people and let's try to understand them. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. We're back in Seven Habits. land. So maybe I even ask some questions rather than arguing. What happened? How are you feeling right now? If I am willing to help them, what do you need? And then what might help you in this moment? Do you see how that goes from this adversarial kind of coming at each other to a collaborative approach? And that is what we want. It's motivational interviewing stuff. Empathy is cooked in there, reflective listening, curiosity, and autonomy. You can or you can't. I'm not going to set my expectations real high here. It seems to me in my timelines that I understand that this nonviolent communication was really before motivational interviewing and the seven habits took off. Mid 80s, late 80s, early 90s, all these things were happening because we really needed it in our society. And when I think about this stuff, this was before the internet, technology, people were texting each other. We had 24-hour news cycles. So we need a reboot. We need to start using this again. Again, that's why I'm excited about this. So let's talk about the jackal and the giraffe. I love the jackal and the giraffe. And these are the two symbols that Rosenberg used. You can go on YouTube and find here little puppets of a giraffe and a jackal coming out. We got way too many jackals right now. So the jackal represents a type of communication that blames, it criticizes, it judges people, it shames people, it diagnoses and labels people, it demands that people do things, right? Is this sounding familiar? Is your heart starting to race? Or you like, I was just watching the news, something popped up in my feed, it was all jackal language. And sometimes, again, this is just me. I label certain people as communicating jackal language most, if not all of the time. I have to recognize those are the sound bites. That's the algorithm that I'm probably built into. So maybe there is more out there. But that's jackal language. What we want to do is use some giraffe language. Now, the giraffe is more empathetic, honest, needs focused, compassionate, and collaborative. And if you're thinking, great, why a giraffe? When I first started looking into this, the giraffe that popped into my head, the giraffe that has meant the most in my life was Jeffrey from Toys R Us. And yes, when my kids were growing up, Jeffrey would call on their birthday. I think he had a voice like this: Happy birthday, Jeffrey the giraffe. But what Rosenberg knew was that the giraffe has the largest heart of any land animal. And that was all about compassion. I didn't know that. Makes sense. I always think of the long neck, but they have the largest heart of any land animal. The other thing a giraffe has, and I didn't know this, they have that long tongue, but their tongue is actually able to work around thorns and things that might puncture because they don't have hands they can use, their lips or their mouth, and eat leaves without getting punctured. And he liked the idea that giraffes in communication are able not to take the bait that might otherwise make them feel blamed or harmed. So they have this great big heart and they're able to get through conversations or use their mouth in a way where they don't get defensive and they don't get hurt. Pretty cool, right? The jackal, I think that makes sense. I always think of the Lion King. I don't know if those were jackals, but I just remember the voices were great. They're aggressive, they're reactive, they are just all gas, no brake, right? They attack, they label people. And right now, again, it just feels to me like we're all getting pulled into this jackal communication. So I'm going to try to be a giraffe. Let me tell you a few more things about this. So here's just some examples. Jackals might say things like, "You're so irresponsible. You never listen. You're being selfish. You always do this." And when we say those things, I can feel it. I'm sure I've said them all. I want the person to know how I feel, but what I'm communicating is you're wrong, that you should be blamed, and that you should kind of straighten up, right? Connect what you're doing. The problem with that is it creates defensiveness. And now we're just going to get into a fight. We're going to turn up that burner about who is right and who is wrong. So if we get back to those four steps that the giraffe would use, observation based on fact, going to a feeling, how do you feel? What is the need that you're not getting right now? And then what is your request? And I'll run you through another one just to kind of put a exclamation point on this. So Jackal might say, "You never help around the house." The giraffe would say, "I notice the dishes have been piling up this week." It's a fact based on one event. Feeling, I'm feeling stressed and resentful because it seems unfair for me to always do the dishes, right? And then the need and the request sometimes can be the same thing. Would you be willing to help me with the dishes after dinner? Just tonight. That's all I'm asking for. And I'm working through this too. If you're thinking the same thing as me, Brian, that still sounds like confrontation. Well, it depends on how you define confrontation. To me, it's honesty, and it's also not being the person who stuffs things. Stuffing doesn't work for me. I only got so much room to stuff things. So that's the main points of this nonviolent communication, Jackal and Giraffe. I got a couple other slides I wanted to show you. You can find these looking around too. I'll put them on my website. And you can also Google, I have the Center for Nonviolent Communication up right now on my second screen. Really cool. So the jackal, like I said, critical, judgmental. They focus on what's wrong. It's always what's wrong. They don't come from a solution-based place. They use language, whether intentional or not, sometimes I think it's just reaction or habit, that creates defensiveness. We're not working cooperatively and collaboratively in jackal land. They make assumptions and generalizations about others. And again, my head is just going, oh, yeah, that's going on a lot right now. All people from all places are doing this. Ugh, it's so frustrating. And we can turn it around. And they engage in power struggles. They always want to dominate the conversation. They talk over people, they're loud. We need more giraffes. So your habits, if you're owning some jackal here, here's the things you can do over the next week. And there's nothing different than what we've been talking about. Show empathy. Got a whole podcast about that. Go and listen to it again. Show some understanding. Try to think of those feelings and needs that we all have. And if it's someone else, it seems like they're getting amped up. Try to think of what need or feeling might they have, and then reflect it to them. Are you feeling this way? Are you needing this thing? They'll let you know, and they'll probably appreciate that you put it that way. We want to be very careful about the language that we use. Be open and work toward connection. Deep listening, I've done podcasts on that too. What's active listening? What's listening versus hearing? Don't just assume things. Ask questions, reflect things, summarize things, and then let's get to some solutions that will foster mutual understanding. The seven habits would talk about being not just being proactive in things, but also that beginning to understand rather than be understood. And we want to come up with synergy, is what Seven Habits calls it. You have an idea, I have an idea. Instead of us pushing in a jackal way and saying this won't work, let's put these things all out on the table. Maybe we can synergize and come up with a plan that neither of us came in with, but it has the best worlds of both of our ideas. And I'm sure, especially when we get to the workplace, we'll be talking more about that one. And the other slide I really liked, because it's got the little giraffe in the middle and the jackal on the outside. So I like things that are in a circle. It may not in a conversation always go the way I laid that technique out. Observe, feeling, request, need. As you start and I start kind of plugging this in, that's the way I'm going to try to throw it out there. I observe this. Here's how I feel about it. Here is my need, and here's my request. But as you start using any communication technique more frequently, like motivational interviewing, 7 habits, I find they're not always in a straight line. Sometimes they're in a circle. And look on the outside. What is your intention? What is your connection with people? You got to own that you're making a choice in communication and you have a freedom, autonomy. So does the other person. What we want to try to stay away from, jackal land now, is making judgments, evaluating everybody, especially without evidence, blaming people, having these expectations of others, and even expectations of ourselves. Are they realistic? What is your perception of the world? Are your feelings facts or are your feelings feelings? Here, Rosenberg calls them false feelings. Feeling like there is no choice, or sometimes people very much say this, there's either this or this choice or this choice. Not necessarily, especially when there's more than one person involved. And especially demands. Making demands, you draw that line in the sand, be careful. So, I hope you can tell I'm excited about this. Over the next week, be thinking about the giraffe, be thinking about the jackal, be thinking about these 4 elements, the techniques of nonviolent communication, and try a few. And also, if you haven't yet, please like and share this video. Check out my YouTube channel and start spreading this around to your friends, family, whoever you want. Person on the bus, they'll love you for it. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week. Communicate responsibly and be a giraffe.